Alright guys, welcome back to Dicker Gaming. Apologies I've been away for a while again. Just the way it sort of works out is sometimes I'm on and sometimes take a while to get around to making the videos. Today we're looking at the US Army's official new main battle rifle and LMG. Not sure what I think about it yet, but I guess we'll watch this video and have a talk about it, and yeah, maybe even have a look at some footage of the weapons firing. So without any further ado, let's get stuck into it. Alrighty, so we'll get started. Just like to say thanks again for the help with the green screen. It's improved the quality a little bit, and I've got some extra lighting and stuff as well. So we're getting there. But yeah, let's have a look at the US Army's official new next generation squad weapon. Looks pretty cool. Let's go.
Army's officially switching to the 6.8 by 51mm XM5 main battle rifle and the XM250 machine gun. It's going to replace the decades-old 5.56mm M4 and M249. This is an expensive switch valued at a total of $4.5 billion over the course of the next 10 years. This massive change signals to us that the US military is worried about confronting a major...
So I think one of the main reasons, they'll probably get into it, but my understanding is they wanted to be able to defeat near-peer body armor and punch out to like the 800 meter mark rather than being stuck at 300 to 400 meters, which would be 6.8 outperforms 7.62, I think. But yeah, let's see what they say.
World superpower like China and Russia. This is the most historic change in over half a century for the US military. I have a theory as to why the only weapon they didn't replace is the M240. But we'll get into that later. Everyone else gets to retire but you. Back to work, M240. Any change in the military at this scale will be risky, and there will be the possibility that this will be a huge mistake. At the very least, there's going to be challenges ahead to overhaul the military's training, tactics, and fighting doctrine. In this video, we're going to examine if the US Army is up to the task. Did they make the right decision, or a giant blunder by switching to the 6.8 XM5?
What do you guys think now? I think that it's probably a good idea. It's going to make the weapon heavier, but then again, the LMG is quite light, I think, at 14 pounds. So yeah, I think it's probably a good move, to be honest.
Next year, in October of 2023, the US Army will have acquired 16,348 of the XM5 battle rifles and 1,704 of the XM250.
So that's what excites me more, is this XM250. It's super light, has an effective range of pretty much similar to the Mag 58 or the GPMG. Yeah, apparently you can hold it out with one hand, easy. So it's less than some rifles, always less than some rifles.
Belt-fed machine guns. Those will be handed out to the close fighting force. Once those rifles reach troops, the weapons will be reclassified to the M5 and the M250, dropping the X from the name. This signifies that the initial trial phase is over and they're ready to go into full production. At that point, they will scale up to arming 120,000 soldiers with these weapons. That number represents all of the infantry, Cav scouts, combat engineers, medics, and forward observers. Remember, only about 25% of soldiers are actually...
So I dare say it'll get tested with the combat arms, and probably special forces as well, although they've got their own sort of thing happening. The interesting fact is, it's only going to the United States Army at the moment. I know the Marines did something with the HK 417 and 416 and getting rid of belt-fed machine guns, which I think is a mistake. Whether or not they'll pick up the Spear and the XM250, I don't know. It would make sense for the whole Air Force, Marines and Army, Space Force to run the same weapons, but yeah.
Combat arms roles. So the rest, like your supply, logistics soldiers, they will all likely be holding on to the M4 for the foreseeable future. The initial order will cost taxpayers around $20.4 million. An additional $20 million was awarded to begin production of the revolutionary new 6.8 by 51mm steel hybrid brass ammunition at Utah's Lake City plant. This location produces
So again, I think that's awesome that they're doing that. They've got this new hybrid ammunition that weighs less, more effective. But logistics-wise, when you have combat troops using the rifle and rear echelon troops not using it, it's going to make it difficult. I think the one big mistake is that the whole military isn't using these weapon systems.
There's about 2 billion rounds of ammunition each year, which will represent the vast majority of US military small arms ammo. At the end of the competition, it came down to the two very different...
I was really hoping for this rifle here. I reckon it would have been much better for what the Army said they wanted to move towards, which was sort of CQB fighting in underground networks, apparently. The SIG looks more like a classic AR. Looks a bit heavier though, so...
different weapon systems. The Army chose not to go with the bullpup and its polymer plastic cased ammo. Some of the potential reasons for why I think they made this decision is that it might have come down to the fact that General Dynamics did not have a belt-fed machine gun option. It could have been seen as the more risky of the two options.
Yeah, true.
Bureaucratic organizations are notoriously risk adverse, and it could be the case that the Army was worried soldiers wouldn't be able to adjust to the bullpups easily. It's also very possible, I think, that SIG's weapons were far more accurate and had better effects on target. As many of you know, I've been following this weapons competition very closely for the past 3 years. My unhealthy obsession with this program is what brought many of you to subscribing to this channel in the first place. Over the years, I've received a lot of comments about how this weapon would never be adopted, and how it would end up on the much beloved Forgotten Weapons channel in a year's time. Many people said I was
It is hard not to imagine it being in the same vein as a SCAR, SCAR H or SCAR L. That was meant to be taken up by Special Forces, but no one really took it up. I suppose, yeah, it's a waiting game.
Idiot for ever even thinking the Army would pull the trigger on this switch. Well, joke's on you, it turns out that has nothing to do with the reason why I'm an idiot. To put how big this change is into perspective, when you look at every other major military around the world, pretty much all currently use a weapon and ammo type that is similar to the smaller 5.56mm M4, including Russia and China. Here, just take a look at how much bigger the XM5 is compared to Russia's AK-12. Yes, I got the scale perfect. And China's QBZ-191. Now look at their ammunition side by side. Compare it to China. That's a lot of extra firepower.
The interesting thing is it only has a 13-inch barrel, but can punch out to 800 meters just due to the round and the chamber pressure. I think the chamber pressure of the rifle, the XM5, is higher than that of a Barrett 50 cal.
In fact, the US military are the very ones who originally created the whole trend of switching away from a giant caliber to a small one back in the 1960s. But some analysts believe this is a high caliber mistake. The Army Times published an article outlining all of the reasons why some believe this is a return to the old, obsolete, high-powered battle rifle philosophy from the 1950s. The M14 was replaced in the 1960s for a lot of the same reasons that military analysts are critical of the new NGSW. Because it was twice as heavy. It took a longer time to train on because of the higher recoil. It only had 20-round magazines instead of 30 rounds.
From my own research that I've done though, apparently these weapons handle recoil extremely well, especially the XM250. So that could be the argument against this. It's not 7.62, it's 6.8, so it's still sort of in between 5.56 and the 7.62.
You could only carry half the amount of ammo because it was heavier, and its recoil was twice as powerful, which made it difficult to make follow-up shots. So what's going on here? It sounds like the Army is clearly taking a step backwards to this old, outdated type of rifle with the XM5. I believe there are 3 key technologies that have changed warfare drastically since the 1950s and are forcing this change to happen now. First, the rise of cheap scopes. Second, the creation of ballistic body armor. Third, new firearms and ammunition manufacturing techniques. These are the reasons why I think this concept is necessary today and would have been nearly impossible to pull off if we tried it even 10 years ago. Since the 1950s, there have been an explosion in firearm scope technology. It wasn't until very recently, in the past 10 years, that optic manufacturing had matured to a point where it finally was relatively cheap enough to mass produce large quantities of 8x magnified scopes for every single rifle. An additional $2.7 billion will be spent over the next 10 years on the new computer-powered 1 to 8x XM157 Vortex fire control system.
This is something I'm a bit more sus on. It starts to make it a lot more confusing, and you want your rifle or weapon system to be pretty idiot-proof, to be honest. It does look good. We'll do a video on this one day, but yeah, even now the sight that's on the MCX5, I think it's a Voodoo sight, so it's one to 6 times. Still a long sight, but you can still use it for CQB.
This allows for the creation of up to 250,000 of these optics, which would cover the entirety of all of the combat arms roles in the military. The new caliber makes absolutely no sense without this scope. Here, picture it this way. If the US soldier were to run into a Russian with an AK-12 or a Chinese soldier with a QBZ-191, the new rifles that they just switched to this year, what would now happen is that the US soldier would have 300 extra meters of range on them. But doesn't it take an insane crack shot with thousands of hours of marksman training to hit targets that far? When the operator presses a button, it takes into account sensor data for laser rangefinder, humidity, temperature, elevation. It all gets fed into a ballistic computer chip and it adjusts the red dot automatically. This doesn't come without a trade-off though.
It is pretty cool, but I just worry that things will fail and what we do in that situation. But
handled a similar prototype from L3 Harris that weighed a whopping 2.5 pounds. This means the standard infantry rifle will likely weigh an extra 5 total pounds. But why does the Army need such powerful ammo? Does it all come down to increasing range? The rise of another relatively new military invention since the 1950s is the mass production of ballistic body armor. They only appeared in large numbers in the US military in the early 2000s. China and Russia caught on to this and have now equipped their own soldiers with ballistic plates.
So I knew China hadn't, I knew Russia did, but I thought China hadn't brought the ballistic armor for their PLA. Looks like they have. So another plus for the 6.8 by 51 round.
Ballistic plates didn't even exist when the M4 was created.
Yeah.
Even though I'm obviously biased towards the M5, I think it's great. Truth is, I know only time will tell how it's going to perform in combat. So I want to present some of these counter arguments, these counter reasons, so that you can make an informed decision. Some analysts believe this weapon is not well suited for dense jungles like in Vietnam or the street fighting of Iraq. The main thrust of the claim against the NGSW is that it's overkill, and the Army went from one end of the spectrum arming troops with this underpowered pea-shooter M4, and they're now over-arming them with this overpowered XM5. The proposed alternative solution here would be to split the difference between the two rifles. Part of the reason why I don't think this weapon is as unreasonable as it appears is because of some of the advances in firearms and ammo manufacturing that have recently happened. So in the 1950s, the battle rifle had to be incredibly long. It was cumbersome with 20-inch long barrel in order for the bullets to have enough.
So this is what I was getting at. The SLR could shoot around, 600 to 800 meters. But I'm pretty sure it's going to say the M5 with a 13-inch barrel. It is pretty heavy. But with a 13-inch barrel, you can get to ranges at 800 meters with the sights provided. So that's pretty good for the average soldier.
Enough muzzle velocity to be accurate beyond 600 meters. This made the weapons unwieldy and poor for door-to-door combat. It's part of the reason why we switched away from them, right? So what has changed since then that has made the XM5 a practical weapon today? The battle rifle today can have a shorter barrel of 16 inches to 8 inches without having to sacrifice muzzle velocity or barrel life. A large part of the reason for this is the new high-pressured ammunition firing at around 80,000 psi. Now, detractors of the NGSW program will point out that an 80,000 psi has never been done before in small arms, and that it potentially could be too high, causing too much recoil, and it could wear out the barrel quickly. The winner of the bid, a company named SIG, is based in New Hampshire. They went from a relatively unknown manufacturer that made weapons in West Germany starting in 1976 to today becoming the sole creators of all of the majority of the small arms in the regular infantry's inventory. The only weapon left that hasn't been replaced yet is the M240, and a lot of people are probably wondering, well, what's going to happen to it now?
See, I think the M240 might get replaced by the XM250. Do we really need a 7.62 machine gun? It's way heavier than a 6.8 by 51. I don't think so. The jump to 50 caliber, yeah, definitely, but I don't think we're going to see this too much in the American military anyway.
Last month in March 2020, we got a hint at the M240's fate when the US Army released a request looking for a 6.8mm conversion kit. The plan appears to be to convert all of the M240s into the new ammo type, since the only thing it will require really is a barrel change.
Swap.
This would make all of the weapons in the infantry use one common ammunition type, which we all know has been a dream for the Army since the 1950s.
The M249 SAW is kind of a notoriously inaccurate weapon. I think it has a minute of angle of 12, if I'm not.
Yeah, to be honest, when I was using it, we call it the Minimum, I found it harder to shoot than the Steyr to qualify on. Not very accurate.
Mistaken, the XM50 is more accurate with a minute of angle of around 8, I think. So the reason they're keeping the M240 is because it has much higher level of accuracy and you don't want to just get rid of it.
The primary weapon of an infantryman has always been more than just a gun. It's an extension of yourself as a soldier and your capabilities. All of your confidence is placed in that rifle. Your rifle is unique to you because no one else has your exact marksman skills. Yet at the same time, it's uniform to everyone else in your unit.
Military history is littered with examples of infantry switching their primary weapon and then devastating the enemy with new tactics. Just look at the ancient Greeks with their sarissa spear, or the Greek phalanx, and you'll see the massive potential here.
Soldiers have always been encouraged to give their weapon a human name. Usually we name them.
So the other thing I was going to say is, will we see 5.56 versions or cut down versions with maybe 300 blackout for CQB? Because yeah, even though it's a 13-inch barrel, it still looks pretty beefy to be reeling through doors and doing CQB with. Might not be, might be completely wrong, but yeah, that would be my only massive concern.
Them after a girl far away back home who we hope hasn't forgotten us yet. The primary rifle is a personal topic close to many, so I can understand why the debate around it gets heated, because ultimately, when you're done sifting through all the data, and you're done talking about barrel sizes and scope specifications, at the end of the day, actual lives are at stake with this decision. We saw how the deficiencies and reliability problems of the M4 may have played a part in the deaths of soldiers in Afghanistan during the Battle of Wanat. But as far as I can see, personally as an average infantryman, I would rather take my chances with the XM5 on the modern battlefield.
Alright, so what do you guys think? I think they're probably both good weapon systems and both going to do what they're designed for. The only worry I have is the logistics side of things between people running M4s, 5.56, and people running this. I think once it comes into service fully, it'll be good. The only other worry I have is interoperability with other nations and their own other branches of military too. It's only the US Army that's adopting this at the moment. I can't not see the other branches picking it up if they're going to spend this much money on something like this. But yeah, what do you guys think? Do you think it's good to go back to intermediate cartridge between 5.56 and 7.62? Do you think it's going to be too long and too heavy for CQB? I personally think it probably will be, but we'll see some CQB versions, maybe a 300 blackout or something like that. Cheers guys, let me know what you think. A lot of you probably know a lot more about firearms than me, so let me know. Cheers.